Hey there, I'm your host, Chanel Dupree, and welcome to another episode of Navigating Child Welfare. I'm joined by Kellie Green, and we are discussing our shared understanding of, at times, the very frustrating nature of the family and child welfare system, the fact that there are so many different individuals that are involved, and these folks need to figure out how to talk to one another and do it in a way that's up to date and that's accurate and that's also passing along at times documents and information. Kellie's with an organization called Sunlight, and I would describe Sunlight as being an organization that is involved in technology, communication, foster care, and kind of wraps it all up with ensuring that lived experience and the lived experience is what guides the development of this tool. And so I want you to take a listen and understand what's available for families, for organizations, for communities as we're all working to figure out how to navigate child welfare better. Kellie and Sunlight's information will be in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Well, welcome to another episode of Navigating Child Welfare, and I am so excited. I have a dear colleague with me, Kellie Green, and Kellie and I have worked together in various places, just in different spaces, but our paths seems to always connect. I would say that Kellie historically has been super involved in child welfare and Medicaid, and has is just kind of known as someone who is an expert and knows a lot about those spaces. And so, but today, Kellie and I are going to be talking about, man, the foster care system, and at times how complicated it is. But you know how we are. We don't like to just admire the problem. We want to figure out what are some solutions and who's doing what in the space. And so Kellie's going to be talking about some things in that regard. Kellie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chanel. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And is there anything that I missed just about who you are and how you show up to this space?
No, you did a great job. As somebody who's worked in child welfare in almost any or every different type of context over my over 20-year career, I've seen a lot, and I feel like what I want my life's purpose to be is to bring more just practices to families who are experiencing the child welfare system, and provide some meaningful support to help them make sense of it, and help them navigate it, and, like, let's get real, prevent any family from having to deal with it if they possibly can. So I'm excited to dig into some of that today.
Yeah, so just in your spaces, because again, you've worked for the state, you've worked for agencies, you've worked for entities. I mean, you just worked for a lot of different folks. What would you say is like what are some of the issues that you see that families experience regarding navigating the child welfare system?
Yeah, well, Chanel, as you know, I mean, you and I sometimes have issues navigating either
Mhm.
child welfare, Medicaid, behavioral health, any type of health care. Um, and that's our profession. And
Mhm.
we have a hard time navigating it, especially when you talk about different states, and states all look very different. And we've, been in it and working in it for decades. And then I think, how are families experiencing it, and the challenge of how confusing it is, and especially during a time with they're very stressed,
Yeah.
and something really significant, really traumatic has happened to their family.
For
And
sure.
so I really think one of the biggest threats to good outcomes in child welfare is it's not bad intentions. Like, there are so many wonderful people working in this space, but it is the broken or inconsistent communication between all of the folks involved in a child's life. You
Yeah.
know, when you work in child welfare, as you and I have for so long, we have met so many amazing, dedicated professionals, caregivers, people in the lives of children, whether caseworkers, foster parents, adopted parents, CASA volunteers,
Mhm.
providers, there's so many folks that they have the heart for this. They have, this is their life's work too.
Mm-hmm.
But from a family and a parent's perspective, a parent entering this unknown world of requirements and, like, let's get real, like some shame and lack of communication, you know, how are they experiencing it? A parent could have, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on their child's team, and they might have to be responsible for communicating with them. And I think from a parent's perspective, like, okay, I have to call my caseworker, but then I have to email my attorney, and then I have to
Yeah,
text the foster parent. And, all of this communication is so siloed and segmented that, like, what would be different if we can get everybody on the same communication thread,
mm-hmm.
um and also, these breakdowns in communication, not only are they very stressful and hard on parents and caregivers, foster parents included, but also, you know what are these communication barriers or breakdowns doing to children?
Yeah,
And, when I think about it, when um, there's breakdowns in communication, that means that a foster parent brought a kid to a visit that the visit wasn't actually happening, or a
yeah,
parent goes to go to therapy, which they thought was set up for them, and they show up there, take off work, and find out it was not. you
yeah,
know um, an attorney trying to outreach a client that just got their number changed.
yeah,
These are common things that happen on a daily basis, but that don't seem to be very, big of a deal. But these are the things that delay permanency.
for sure.
And when you show up to court and somebody didn't get the right document, or someone didn't get notification, and it delays a case 30, 60, 90 days. I
Yep.
mean, to you and I, we're like, okay, 30, 60, 90, what delay? Okay. But this is a child's life.
Yeah.
This is a birthday they might miss that they could have gone with their parent to experience. This is a holiday that they won't get to be together. Child time is different than adult time.
Yeah.
90 days for me, like, I've had 40 something years. But when you're 5, 90 days is
Mm-hmm.
like a significant part of your life. And so if we can do something to reduce the delays, reduce the breakdown in communication, I think that could really enhance outcomes for families. And another thing is when we talk about breakdowns in communication and what it does to the family itself, it makes them feel invisible, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And when their voice isn't heard, and when they can't see everything that's kind of that they have the right to see that's going on with their child, where does that leave them? And, I think, we're going to talk about it coming up, but I think that's the problem that Sunlight aims to address, is this infrastructure. And how can we provide tools to enhance communication
Yeah.
and connection for people in a child's life? I just think that's critically important, especially when we talk about transparency too. I
Yeah.
think child welfare has a transparency issue. When people can't see information or aren't communicated with, that really erodes trust over time.
You're saying all the things, right? And when I think about just several kind of roles of the system that I've talked to, I remember I talked to a CASA worker, and she was telling me that there was one situation where there were multiple children involved. And so she wrote it all out, and there were over 100 people that were involved in that case. And when you think about it, that's insane. Like that is it's too much. Like how do you keep up with that? And then how do you expect a family to navigate through all those very complex pieces? Because CASAs have one family that they're working with. But then when you think about like a caseworker, they have multiple families that they're working with. The other piece that you talked about, just like the complexities of it, I remember I was talking with who was it, a kinship care provider, and she walked into the hearing and she was just like, I didn't understand who people were, what they were saying, and it felt like I shouldn't even be there. Like it felt like I was intruding on this like secret conversation that they were having. She's like, after every hearing, I have to walk out and ask somebody, what did they say? Like I have no idea. And so what you're talking about, just in concern of trust and how do you provide transparency and how do people really understand what's happening, that's so important. So you mentioned sunlight. Talk a little bit about what sunlight is. I mean, we know what sunlight is, but
Right,
what is,
right. Well, let's talk about it at the
yeah.
brighter world level. We all know what sunlight is. What sunlight does is, like, first of all, like, right now where we're in Kansas City right now, Chanel, and it's March, and we're getting more sunlight in our days because spring is
Hmm.
coming. And I don't know about you, but that energizes me.
Yes.
Um, and so, that's kind of the symbolism behind the name. Also, sunlight can be one of the best disinfectants, and so we love those sentiments to bring hope and light and clarity to things. And so really what sunlight is we aim to solve that communication transparency problem, in child welfare, in child serving entities, just in any you know system or circumstance that a child is involved in which they have multiple team members that need to be communicated with. So sunlight really is a coordination platform built for child serving ecosystems. And it's designed to connect attorneys, caseworkers, biological parents, foster parents, CASAs, service providers, every one of those 100 people that you mentioned in a child's life.
Hmm.
It aims to connect them in one space that can be accessed from a device easily. Everyone can see what is happening in real time, and that helps communication move faster, accountability increases, and
Hmm.
families really stop falling through the cracks between the systems. It is a system that can, number one, HIPAA compliant and can house important documents. So for instance, a child's medical card, that's really important for everyone to be able to know that in case they're caring for the child. Their
Hmm.
allergies, important court documents, case plans. It houses those documents, and then it gives each person a role. So that role, whether it be a caseworker or a parent, we can structure what they're able to see through their role in the system.
Yeah, I like
What's great
that.
about it
Hmm.
is, especially for parents, this system was not designed for companies, and it wasn't designed for another entity, a different type of system, which is a lot of times what you see software doing in this industry. This was specifically designed for child welfare, and it was specifically designed with parents and caregivers in mind because we need it to work for them. It's going to be great. And it does work for systems to help make sure that we have the data and reporting that we need to meet outcomes and report out on, like, who we're serving and what that looks like. But if it doesn't work for parents, then we're missing the point. We really
Hmm.
want parents to have a more just and equitable experience in this. And this enables parents to be able to see what's going on with their children, and it enables them to also talk with their attorneys in a more efficient way. And it enables anyone involved to be able to upload documents. So instead of trying to fax it or email it, you simply can take a picture of it with your phone, send it to your attorney or anyone else, the caseworker that needs to find out about it. So from a parent perspective, we're really aiming for it to be easier for the parent to communicate and be able to see everything that's going on with their case. It also helps them be able to see, like, really clearly what are the expectations and what are the things that I have to achieve, what have I already achieved, and
Yeah.
some timelines. It enables caseworkers and attorneys to send out push notifications to everyone involved in a child's team. It enables them to send out calendar invites so we know that
Hmm.
everyone got the invite for the court date or the supervised visit or the
Hmm.
child family team meeting. And it just helps us keep all of that communication in one spot. So instead of, especially when thinking about caseworkers, I mean, their job is an administrative nightmare.
Yep.
It is,
Hmm.
coordinating all what hundreds of different people, like you just said before. It's playing a bunch of phone tag. And as someone who's been a caseworker, that is not why I got into this industry.
Right.
I got in the industry to really connect with families and to walk with them in their journey.
Hmm.
And it wasn't to do paperwork and play phone tag. And
Right.
so our software really will enable caseworkers to spend less time on administratively burdensome processes, and more time actually with their parents. And the same goes for CASA volunteers too. we want them to spend as much time with those kids as they can and
Right.
less time on paperwork. So really, really aiming to better coordinate communication and reduce those gaps in the system, and especially reduce delays to permanency because of the lack of communication.
What I really like about this as well, when we think about one of the issues that we have in child welfare is turnover. And we, of course, want to do all that we can to reduce turnover. But when it happens, if you have this system, then it's like everything is in one place and the new worker can just come in and I'm assuming they can just kind of plug in and have access now to the historical information and information moving
Absolutely.
forward.
And,
Okay.
and it's in one spot. Instead of having to
Hmm.
check this system, this system, this system, it is all in one spot.
Yep.
Even when a case may have to transfer to another attorney or something, like, you can go right in, not only see all the documents, but see all the communication. Every time mom has called, every time mom has, left a message, every time the caseworker has sent documentation, it's all right there. It also enables like text and video calling. So all of that is automatically logged. So again, making it easier on families, and just really trying to change the way that the time spent and the way people work
So
on
is
cases.
absolutely. So is this, so it's an app and then is it also, can you access it on your computer or
Of
what is the,
course. Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And so where is this happening at? Is this, t
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that.
We have some really exciting. One thing that's happening in child welfare nationwide that we're seeing is more states trying to look at uh, parental defense, and utilizing dollars to strengthen parental defense, or even maybe offer different types of uh, volunteer navigators that can help parents throughout their child welfare journey, walk with them and help them navigate. So we have some statewide projects. Oklahoma is one that we're working with the parental defense entity there, and
So, okay,
they're find
pause.
yeah.
So when you say parental defense, tell me exactly what you're talking about.
So what states are starting to form like offices of parent counsel.
Oh,
So
interesting.
the parents attorneys that are assigned to them when their children come in, how do we strengthen that representation to give parents a more equitable representation in court, and to make sure that they have an advocate in the courtroom just like children do, or just like the defense does. So yeah, we're looking at, you know, we have some different projects with different types of legal entities, because they've
Gotcha.
found some of the software that they're using is, it's legal software that maybe is good for
Yeah.
that aspect, but it wasn't developed with child welfare in mind. So we wanted to give them something simpler to do outreach with their clients. And so we have some work in Oklahoma, West Virginia. We've signed a few other new states that are interesting in doing this as well.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so back to the parental defense. It's interesting because every state has their own system and way of assigning attorneys for parents. And so and it's kind of like a public defender's office in a way, uh, which is not something that all states have, regarding specifically like the child welfare system. And so that's really interesting to hear that Oklahoma's doing that and that there's like an entity dedicated to that, which I think there's a lot of strengths to having like an organization that is housing that because you have like consistent trainings, you have consistent expectations and all those different things. So that is awesome. So
Yeah, and
is
I would
it,
I would
mhm,
say the Oklahoma office of it's called the Oklahoma Office of Family Representation. I would say them and their leader there are really progressive and leading the charge. And a lot of other states are looking to what they're doing because they've found a lot of success. So, kudos to them for being a leader and then supporting other states that want to do something similar. So, we're happy to partner with those type of entities. We're also partnering with child welfare agencies and state child welfare entities to
Mm,
offer this to them as well. You know, having all of those documents. You know, Kansas, for example, children still have to go from placement to placement with a physical, you know, 3-ring binder.
yes, the red
And as you
book or the
can,
blue book, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever
Uh-huh.
color that state
Yep.
decides. Yeah. And
Yep.
so we all know, like, we all, those books get lost constantly, or
Absolutely.
they're not updated when
Yeah.
important information needs to be updated. And that makes it hard to care for children. And so this is an
Mhm.
online solution for that. So it cannot get lost. It can go wherever, with, to a child and to new, and people can get it instantly.
Mm.
And then also, agencies are really enjoying the turnover part of it. Like you mentioned before, when a new worker comes onto a case, spending time and really reading through everything can be very time
Mhm.
consuming. And so our software really helps, like you mentioned before, make that transition to a new worker a lot more seamless. Even talking turnover aside, which we know is a huge issue in child welfare,
Mhm.
there are still times where a child moves to another worker because their rights have been, the parental rights have been terminated. They want to
Right.
move them to an adoption team, or maybe they
Right.
move to independent living, and so that's another new worker in the child's life. So
Mhm.
really, it's a great tool to help get those people up to speed quickly, and then they don't have to search for all of the numbers and program them into their phone.
Yeah.
Like let's say you start and you get a brand new caseload. Putting all those numbers in your phone, I mean, that
Yep.
alone would take an afternoon. This makes it, easy. You just get it right away.
Okay, I also love the perspective because when you think about traditionally how people even attorneys how you like when you pass your file on, all you have are your notes, which is your perspective. And so when you have access to everyone's perspective, that can help give you a more holistic view of what has happened in this with this family, and how to move forward. I have a question though. Will the judge receive access to this? Like, I'm just
No.
interested. Has that
That's
happened
a
or
that's a
not?
good question. No, attorney-client privilege is
Uh-huh,
something that we take very seriously,
for
and so
sure.
we've built up firewalls so that that can be protected, and so that only the people who really have access or authority to see certain things get that. So when we talk about subpoenaing records and things like that, we have things put in place to protect that. And
Hmm.
if an attorney can kind of control what is seen and what isn't seen, and so we've definitely thought through all that. And because we're so passionate about fair and equitable representation for parents, it's something we take very seriously.
Okay, so what have the organizations that you've been working with, what are they concerned about? Like, what is the thing that people or folks when they hear about this that they're like, oh, I don't know, like, so what are some of like the hesitations that you're hearing?
Great question. I think one of the biggest hesitations is something that we've been hearing is, well, we already have something kind of like that. We don't, and the truth of the matter is like a lot of entities do have something similar. I have not seen a whole lot of entities that have exactly this. And the
Mm,
beauty of Sunlight is we can integrate we're a nice complement to a lot of other systems. So, there are similar tech companies that do placement matching for children, and that some of their unique um, identifiers or things, and how do we match them with appropriate foster placement. We don't do that, but we complement that system really well. You
mm,
even think about an EHR, electronic health record, that we all kind of are
mhm,
getting now with the different providers that we see. We can integrate with an EHR as well, so we can bring in those behavioral health treatment plans into the system as well. So then again, you're connecting everyone important. So, I think a lot of entities that I've talked to, they're like, well, we kind of, and we can work
mhm,
with those entities and strengthen what you already have. So I think that's one of the biggest things we hear. And, also coming from working in child welfare for so long, receiving a lot of pitches for companies that are trying to help.
mhm.
I love it when I see more entities using their finances, creativity, knowledge to help solution for some of the problems in child welfare, we should never turn those away.
Hmm.
Um, However, I do think that some of them have not lived in the system,
Gotcha.
or and they're very well intentioned, great ideas. I'm not saying they won't work, but
But they also may not work because they're
they may not.
not built from real
They may
experiences.
not. And so we have we've hired parents with lived experience, like they're a
Hmm.
critical part of our leadership team,
Ooh, I love
because their
that.
perspective is what we're solutioning for. If it's not going
Hmm.
to work for them, then like what are we doing? And so we highly, it's integral, our work, having lived experience as a key component into how we build is really important. And I think that because we've built this specifically for child welfare entities and child family serving entities, and we've
Hmm.
done it with human design centered thinking and lived experience, I just think that is something that we don't see all the time.
Right.
And one of the things too is, like I was saying before, when you have these different entities coming to you and you're a leader in child welfare, I think everyone's been burned, before, of somebody
Hmm.
promising something and it not working out, or you thought it was going to do one thing and it doesn't. You invest
Yeah.
all this funding into that, and it can be deeply disappointed. And so I think child welfare, to some degree, they want this innovation, they want to enhance their outcomes, but they're a little hesitant. And
Yeah.
that's fair. And so that's why we're really trying to bring some transparency to all that. Because,
Hmm.
when you increase that transparency, you increase trust. And that's really what we're here to do.
Yeah. What is it? What is it? Un
Under promise, over
Over
deliver.
deliver,
Or is
yes.
that, yeah.
Okay, so then kind of my last question is you can have a great product, but if people don't use it, then it's not helpful. So are you finding that people are using this and and what are those experiences of the people who are actually using the Sunlight app and experience?
Yeah. When we've talked to parents who have, endured a lengthier experience in child welfare, when they have their before time that they've gotten to use sunlight, and then after, parents have even said, oh, where was this? This would
Mm,
have made so many things easier. uh, and even thinking about, how many times do we submit documentation to anyone and someone says, I didn't get it. And you say, well, I
yep.
sent it. I'll forward you the email again because I can prove I sent it. That kind of the sunlight takes all of that guesswork out of it, because it's just transparent and clear what was sent and what wasn't sent.
Yeah.
Um, so that is, I think that's what parents have found valuable. Even in our training that we roll out, when new entities pick this up, I mean, our trainers are parents with lived experience.
Mm,
So, again, that deep understanding of what parents really need, I think is hugely important. When we talk to attorneys, they've said that Sunlight has reduced the amount of administrative burden that they've had. They no longer have to search for phone numbers, or call different numbers, or try to find a number for someone. So it's, again, lawyers, I'm sure you can relate to this. Like, you didn't get in this to like try to chase people down and do paperwork. You
absolutely.
came it to like represent people. And
Absolutely.
and then the same for caseworkers too. This is really, like, caseworkers have loved using this. And
Hmm.
it really, to some degree, also kind of revolutionizes engagement.
Yeah.
um, and if we don't have engagement, no matter what kind of what seat we sit on the bus in a child's life, engagement should be number one. And so to reduce some of that other stuff that they've been doing and leave more time to truly engage is what people are really enjoying about it.
No, I love this. My mind's kind of going. I'm like, it'd be interesting if like attorney bar associations could have access to this, especially in places where, like Missouri, where attorneys are like required to do child welfare work. They'll be appointed whether they work in this field or not. And so like having this as a tool could be very helpful for a practitioner. So this was wonderful.
Yeah. Also, like, just, families, if you ask a family, what is a parent, ask a parent, um, what is your attorney's name? Have you ever met with them before?
Mm-hmm.
And then we ask them that before they've used sunlight. And a surprising amount, like more than 50% of the time, they don't know
Mm.
because they have so many professionals in their child's life and it's all so new. After using sunlight, they can more explicitly say who their attorney is. And more often than not, they've actually met with them too, because attorneys have more time. So I think that's really critically important too, because parents are just more understanding and knowledgeable of like who is involved in their child's case and being sure to communicate with them.
Okay, so now I'm like, what about youth? Like, do they get access to this?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now, for youth aging out, this is where we are setting our sights for the future.
Okay.
And that is, youth being able to have access to their critical documents to
Yeah.
go get a driver's license, to go apply for college or housing, or, I don't know about you, but I, have lost important documentation before. And it's very, especially if you move a lot. And let's get
Yep.
real, if you're 20 years old, like, honestly, I was keeping that stuff at my parents' house
Yep.
so I wouldn't lose it. This really will enable people to have access to their documents and be able to have them at the ready when they need them for something important. And I think that's really where we're looking to support, is we know how critical that those youth that unfortunately age out of care, they need these types of supports to take one less worry off of their plate.
Absolutely. So that's like Sunlight 2.0.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Any kind of final thoughts about what we've said or anything that you want to share with folks?
Yeah, well, I just appreciate you giving us the time today. Anybody, if you want to learn more, go to getsunlight.org. Just remember, sunlight is good for all of us. And so
Mhm.
just really appreciate the time to share about what we do. And we welcome questions. We're always building and growing, and we value the end user and their, like, what they want out of this. So if people have
Mhm.
thoughts, ideas, no matter where you sit in the continuum of child serving entities, like, reach out. We're happy to have conversations, and you all are the experts, and we learn and we like to listen to you, and that's how we get better. And so feel free to reach out, getsunlight.org, and happy to have those conversations.
This is why I love connecting with you, Kelly, because you have like this growth mindset and understanding that we don't know it all, but we can learn together and we can iterate and build, but let's move, let's go forward. So thank you, Kelly, for stopping in and just sharing one way, right, that we can work to navigate the family and child welfare system better. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more.
Thanks, Chanel.
Our mission is to simplify systems and connect communities. If you are interested in learning more about the Sinking Child Welfare Program, click the link in the show notes to stay updated. I'm excited to stay connected to you.